My name is Connor, and if you had asked me a year ago whether love could turn into the cruelest kind of betrayal, I would have smiled and said no. I believed in loyalty, in partnership, in Ariana, my wife, who once claimed I was her whole world. But everything changed the day she blocked me on every app, removed me from her life with a single tap, as if our years together meant nothing. I was sitting alone in our small apartment, staring at the final message where she said she was tired of being poor with me, when suddenly my phone buzzed, not with her messages, but with her photos syncing into my device. She forgot one thing. Months ago, she synced her iCloud with mine, and that night, her truth walked straight into my hands. Pictures of her laughing in a luxury hotel with billionaire Alexander, screenshots of chats where she called me too small for her life, voice notes whispering new promises. I didn't scream. I didn't break. I simply whispered to myself, "You blocked me, Ariana, but you forgot your I." And in that moment, I knew this betrayal wouldn't stay silent. It would be witnessed live. I still remember the day I first met Ariana, long before betrayal or money entered the picture, when life was simple and my dreams were small but full of hope. She was standing outside a cafe in town, her hair slightly messy from the evening wind, holding a coffee cup she couldn't afford but bought anyway just to feel normal, and I was working there part-time cleaning tables and saving every dollar to pay rent. She smiled at me that day, not because I was somebody important, but because I offered her a free refill when she couldn't find enough change. And that tiny moment turned into hours of conversation. Then daily meets, then love that felt too real to ever break. And when I proposed to her 2 years later with a ring I bought using my saved tips, she cried and told me, "I don't care about money, Connor. I care about you, but life has its way of testing promises." And once we got married, reality struck hard. I worked as a junior technician in a small IT repair shop, earning just enough to survive in a noisy U.S. city where everything costs more than emotions can buy. While Ariana dreamt of living in beautiful apartments, wearing designer clothes, posting photos in expensive restaurants like the women she saw online, and at first she kept her frustrations inside. But slowly it surfaced through little comments like, "When will things get better?" Or "Do you think love alone pays bills?" And I tried everything: side jobs, repairing laptops, late shifts, skipping meals to save money, telling her to be patient because I was working on a tech startup idea I believed could change our future. But she started doubting me, comparing me to her friends' husbands who had stable office jobs. And every evening when she returned from her marketing firm job, looking glamorous, she would ask if I had any progress or if we were still just surviving. And sometimes I saw her scrolling through social media with a bitter look, jealousy slowly poisoning her heart. And though I held her and promised I'd make her proud one day, she started pulling away emotionally, no longer excited by my dreams, no longer holding my hand when we walked at night. Then she began spending more time working late, attending networking events at upscale hotels. And even when she came home with expensive gifts, saying her company rewarded her, I never questioned it, because love makes you blind to red flags. And I convinced myself that she was stressed, not drifting away. I remembered once waking at midnight to find her sitting by the window, looking at city lights and whispering, "I want more from life." And I hugged her, saying I'd give her the world one day, but she didn't hug back. That was the first night I realized our dreams were no longer the same, and slowly our love story turned into a silent distance neither of us acknowledged until the day she walked out. The distance between Ariana and me slowly shifted from emotional to physical. But I kept trying to bridge a gap that I didn't know had already turned into a silent wall, because I still woke every morning believing love was enough. Even when she woke up checking her phone before even looking at me. Even when she dressed beautifully and left for work without a goodbye kiss, saying she was late for an important meeting. My days were filled with fixing broken laptops and designing prototypes for a tech app I believed would solve consumer storage issues. And at night, I waited for her to return, sometimes until 11 p.m., telling myself she had work pressure. But deep down, I sensed something changing, something slipping away from me like sand through fingers. And one evening, when she walked in wearing a new perfume I couldn't afford, and carrying a handbag worth more than our monthly rent, I gently asked where she got it, and she casually replied, "A client gifted it to me for helping close a deal," her voice flat, emotionless, and though I nodded, my heart whispered that kindness rarely comes without hidden intentions. Still, I smiled because I didn't want to seem insecure or controlling. I thought strength meant silence, and every time her phone buzzed and she walked out of the room to answer it, I chose to trust rather than question, because I remembered her saying I was too small for her life. Only later when I saw those messages, but back then, I still believed those words didn't exist. Over time, she started spending weekends at corporate seminars in different cities, returning with better clothes, manicured nails, and an attitude that made it clear she was growing into someone I couldn't recognize. And one night, when she returned late, she looked at our apartment with tired eyes and whispered, "Do you ever feel we're stuck, Connor?" And I replied softly, only temporarily, but she sighed as if she no longer believed in temporary. And before turning away, she added, "Maybe I need something more permanent." And that sentence kept echoing in my mind like a warning of what was coming. I started noticing how she avoided spending time with me, canceled dinner dates, stopped asking about my dreams, and whenever I mentioned that my startup idea was gaining attention from a small investor, she brushed it off saying, "Ideas don't pay bills," and the words stung. But I swallowed the pain, telling myself she was stressed. Then one evening, I went to her office to surprise her with flowers, only to see her leaving in a black luxury car that wasn't hers. But I convinced myself she was sharing a corporate ride. Even though the driver opened the door with too much admiration and she stepped in without hesitation, not seeing me across the street watching, and that night when I asked who dropped her off, she lied effortlessly, saying a colleague gave her a lift. And I believed because I was afraid to ruin the peace we barely shared. Our conversations became hollow. Our home turned quiet, and every time I tried to talk, she said she was too tired. And one night, when I tried to hold her hand, she gently pulled away, turning to the other side of the bed without a word, and I stared at the ceiling, wondering if love could die so quietly. Then one morning, she woke up earlier than usual, dressed elegantly, and as she grabbed her handbag, she looked at me and said, "I'm traveling for 3 days for work. Don't wait for me." And before I could respond, she had already walked out the door. Those 3 days were the longest of my life, filled with silence and a haunting doubt I tried to bury by working harder on my project, telling myself that success would bring her back to me, that maybe she just needed proof of stability. But when she returned, she avoided eye contact, and in the evening, she finally said, "Connor, we need to talk." And though her voice was calm, my heart began racing because I knew nothing good ever comes after that sentence. We sat at the small dining table, and she told me she felt unfulfilled, trapped in a life that wasn't progressing fast enough. And when I reminded her of our promise to build together, she replied, "I feel like I'm building alone," and I tried to tell her about my slowly progressing business plans. But she shook her head and said, "It's always plans, Connor, never results." And before I could defend myself, she added, "Maybe we rushed into this marriage," which felt like a dagger piercing through every memory we had created together. I was speechless, hurt, but I stayed calm and told her I would work harder, that she just needed to believe in us. But she stood up, grabbed her phone, and replied, "Belief doesn't change reality," and walked away, leaving me sitting there wondering when my love story became one-sided. In the following days, she barely spoke to me, rarely came home before midnight. And one night when she finally did, she simply said, "I can't keep living like this," then turned around and left again, leaving behind the echo of a relationship slowly breaking apart. I spent hours writing code for my app, pushing through exhaustion, believing if I could just secure the investor's full support, I could surprise her with success. But deep down, I feared it might be too late. The final straw came one afternoon when I received a call from her workplace saying she had resigned 2 weeks ago and wasn't in any official business trip since. And I froze, realizing she had lied repeatedly. And when she returned that evening, and I calmly asked about her resignation, she didn't even look surprised that I knew, but simply said, "I found better opportunities." And when I asked what those were, she said, "Maybe you'll understand when you can afford to think big." And that sentence shattered something inside me. The next morning, she blocked me from everywhere, and without explanation, walked out of our home as if cutting off digital ties could erase the years we spent together, not knowing that by sharing her iCloud months ago, she had already, unknowingly, shared her truth with me, and the real conflict was only beginning to unfold. The day Ariana blocked me from every app, Every platform, without a goodbye or explanation, I felt like my world collapsed, like every sacrifice I made had been wiped away with a single tap of her finger. And I sat alone in our dim apartment, trying to process how the woman who once smiled at me over coffee could so easily erase me from her life. And as I stared at the wall in silence, my phone suddenly buzzed not from her, but from the hidden truth she failed to lock out. A notification appeared, iCloud sync complete, 12 new items added, and I ignored it at first, thinking it was from my work files. But then more notifications came, and something told me to open them, and the moment I did, my heartbeat thundered in my ears, my eyes widened, and I felt as if the air had been knocked from my lungs. Captured in high-quality photos, smiling confidently beside Alexander in luxurious locations, an expensive rooftop restaurant, inside a private jet, leaning into him at a candlelit table, her hand resting where I used to hold it. In one picture, Alexander's hand circled her waist as they posed near a hotel elevator, and she wore the same dress she had lied about, saying it was a reward gift, and I realized she had worn it for him, not for any corporate celebration. Tears burned my eyes. My hands trembled, but I kept scrolling because sometimes the hardest truth must be seen to be accepted. More photos, since spa sessions, shopping bags from luxury brands, hotel reservations under her name, business class flight tickets paid by him. And I felt sick knowing that while I worked late nights fixing broken devices to pay for groceries, she was flying across cities with a billionaire. But it didn't stop. Their screenshots of chat conversations appeared next, and I read every line in disbelief. He's a good guy, but not enough. She texted Alexander, followed by, he's still chasing dreams. I want someone who already lives them. And Alexander replied, leave him, you deserve luxury. To which she wrote, I've already blocked him. Soon he'll be out of my life completely. And at that moment, something in me shattered utterly. I felt a pain deeper than anger. Beyond heartbreak, it was betrayal that twisted everything good I had believed in. Then came the final blow. A voice note from Ariana to Alexander, where she said softly, when the time is right, I'll move in with you. Connor will probably never understand. He's too weak to fight it, and when I heard those words, I didn't cry, just went completely silent, because the pain was beyond tears. For a long moment, I just stared at my phone screen, feeling hollow. Then slowly, I sat up straighter, wiped my face, and whispered to myself, weak. No, silent doesn't mean weak, and that was the exact turning point when all my pain transformed into clarity. Instead of calling her or confronting her with rage, I did something she would never expect. Calmly connected my phone to my laptop and transferred every picture, every chat screenshot, every voice note into a secured folder, organized by date and location. Then I retrieved the old recordings of our arguments where she called me a failure and said love wasn't enough. Not because I wanted to humiliate her, but because I wanted to show the world how silently hearts break when money enters where love once lived. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up planning, writing a timeline of her betrayal and organizing evidence, realizing that in a world full of filters and fake facades, people believe what they see online more than what they hear privately. So the only way to make Ariana understand what she had done was to let her face the truth in front of everyone. I created a private livestream link, scheduled for the day she was meeting Alexander again at daytime, found through synced calendar invitations and hotel bookings. I booked a room in the same hotel that night, close enough to witness the confrontation, but far enough to execute my plan. As I finalized the stream settings, I added one line to the live title, she blocked me, but forgot her iCloud, then attached their photos, chats, and a final recorded message from me describing how love turns to betrayal when loyalty is sold for luxury. Every moment of preparation felt like stitches closing a wound. Even though it hurt, it also strengthened me. On the day of the meeting, I dressed calmly, wearing the same suit I had worn at our wedding because I wanted to remind her who she had married. I entered the hotel lobby quietly, watching through the glass as Ariana arrived in a shimmering gown, smiling radiantly as Alexander took her hand. My chest tightened, but I didn't approach them yet. Instead, I took out my phone and pressed the Go Live button, letting the stream start with thousands of viewers joining instantly because I had spent the previous night sending anonymous teasers to popular relationship blogs and live gossip pages. As the viewership number began rising rapidly, I walked toward their private dining lounge. every step steady, driven by truth. When I finally approached their table, Ariana saw me and froze, her smile fading instantly while shock spread across her face. She whispered, "Connor, what are you doing here?" But before she could react, Alexander turned to look at me dismissively. And at that moment, I raised my phone gently and said in a calm voice broadcasted live, "I'm here because when you blocked me, Ariana, you forgot one thing, the place where your truth still lives." And I pressed play on the recordings. The photos flashing on the live feed, their chats scrolling across the screen, her voice echoing through the speakers. Gasps erupted from the surrounding tables as Alexander looked at her with sudden disgust, backing away while Ariana's face turned pale, her body shaking. She tried to mute the phone, begged me to stop, tears forming in her eyes. But I simply said, "You sold loyalty for luxury, but I loved you even when I had nothing. And today, everyone will see the price you put on love." And as she broke down crying, viewers flooded the live with shock, sympathy, and outrage, and I walked away, slowly, leaving her surrounded by truth she could no longer escape, knowing this was the moment she would regret forever, but now it was too late. In the crushing silence of the courtroom hallway, where Ariana's live-streamed betrayal shattered millions and left her standing defenseless before the world, I felt something inside me snap, not in anger this time, but in realization. I had spent years chasing her approval, sacrificing my dreams, working insane hours, enduring her insults and dismissive coldness, all for a love that was never truly reciprocated. Today, standing here with Alexander attempting to wipe the humiliation off himself, and Ariana trembling as her followers detonated her credibility online, I realized I finally had closure. I looked her dead in the eyes as she desperately whispered, "Connor, please, we can fix this." But it was too late. Her words were shotgun recoil after she had already fired. I didn't argue, didn't shout. Instead, I calmly pulled out the divorce papers I had signed the night before, slid them across the desk in front of her, and said softly, "I won't fight you anymore. I'm freeing you from the man you never valued, and I'm freeing myself from the chains I pretended were love." She crumbled instantly, collapsing to her knees in front of the court officers, sobbing that she didn't mean it, begging that the texts were just manipulation, that she thought love was measured in gifts and status, not sacrifices and silence. Alexander tried to step in, but his reputation was sinking faster than hers within hours. Companies were backing out of deals. His face was trending under hashtags like #Betrayal Billionaire and #Luxury Trash. His wife released a statement exposing his years of emotional blackmail and infidelity. Meanwhile, Ariana's career imploded. Sponsorships pulled out, followers unfollowed her live, and brands terminated long-term contracts within minutes. But despite the chaos, I only felt peace. I walked out of that building and onto the steps where news cameras swarmed around. But instead of avoiding them, I faced them with composure, not revenge. "I don't hate her," I said, voice calm, eyes steady. "I just finally loved myself more." The clip went viral worldwide, boosting my quiet, minimal online presence into a movement, inspiring millions going through silent emotional suffering. I returned to our small home alone, took off my wedding ring, and placed it gently inside a box labeled Lessons, Not Loss. Days passed, and I focused on rebuilding myself, worked on upgrading my IT certification, opened a channel to help people in toxic relationships use technology to protect themselves, teaching privacy, digital safety, emotional awareness. Ariana reached out multiple times, calls, emails, voice notes in the middle of the night. "Connor, please answer me. I missed the man who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." But I never responded. Emotional wounds don't heal by reopening them. One evening, while packing a suitcase for my first tech conference as a guest speaker on digital betrayal recovery, I received a final voice note from her. Her voice was broken, stripped of pride. "Connor, I didn't realize I was losing everything when I was trying to gain more. I wish I could go back. I never loved anyone like I loved you. I just didn't understand real love until I lost it." I listened silently, then hit archive without replying. Not delete, not anger, just closure. And as I stepped onto the airplane, I looked out the window and whispered, not to Ariana, but to myself, sometimes the greatest revenge is becoming someone she thought you could never be without her. and for the first time in years, I smiled. As the plane lifted off the runway, leaving the city where my heart had once been buried under broken trust and unspoken pain, I felt lighter than I had in years, as if life finally allowed me to exhale. It wasn't triumph, I felt it was freedom, the kind that doesn't roar, but whispers quietly in the depth of your soul, telling you that survival is no longer your story. Renewal is. While Ariana was busy crafting apologies for the audience she had once manipulated with filters and rehearsed vulnerability, I stepped onto a stage before a room full of people, some broken, some lost, some silently carrying pain like I once didn't. I spoke, not as a victim of betrayal, but as someone reborn from it. The hardest truth, I said, is that sometimes we fight to keep people who were never fighting to keep us. We trade our peace for their comfort and call it love. My words resonated, not because they were beautifully phrased, but because they were real. After the session, several people approached me, one woman in tears, saying she watched the live stream of Ariana's confession and made the decision to leave her abusive relationship that same night. Another man confessed to checking his own toxic behaviors, fearing he might become the kind of partner he once resented. That's when I realized something profound. What was meant to destroy me became the very foundation of my purpose. Meanwhile, Ariana continued to spiral publicly. Every post she made, trying to regain sympathy, was met with comments like, "You regret it only because you got exposed." Or two, "Late respect dies the moment betrayal is revealed." She once lived off validation. Now, silence followed her everywhere. The rich man, Alexander, tried to salvage his image with charity moves and public apologies. But the internet never forgets. His wife divorced him and exposed even more behind-the-scenes cruelty and manipulation, turning him into a cautionary headline about how power without values eventually collapses. And me, I didn't need revenge, because life made them confront themselves, and that is the sharpest form of justice. Months passed and I moved to another state, closer to a quiet lake, working remotely in cybersecurity, traveling occasionally to speak about digital awareness and emotional boundaries. One afternoon, I received a package with no return address. Inside was the wedding photo of Ariana and me, along with a handwritten note that simply said, "I finally understand. I'm sorry not to get you back, but because I ruined the only real thing I ever had." There were tear stains on the edges. I didn't respond. I didn't get angry. I simply placed the photo in the same box labeled lessons and closed it for the last time. See, some stories don't end with revenge or reconciliation. Some end with acceptance. The final message I'd like to leave with anyone watching this is simple. Love should never cost you your dignity, your silence, or your identity. If someone makes you feel like you must shrink to be loved, it isn't love, it's control wearing perfume. Don't wait for the day they regret losing you. Become someone you're proud of and let them watch from a distance. And if you're currently in the place I once stood, lonely despite being loved, unheard despite speaking, betrayed despite giving everything, remember this: you do not heal by going back to what broke you. You heal by choosing yourself, even when it hurts. Because sometimes the deepest form of closure isn't hearing, "I'm sorry." It's standing in front of the mirror years later, smiling at how far you've come, and realizing you no longer need it. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. Let your heartbreak become your rebirth. Let your silence become your statement. And most importantly, let what was done to break you become the very reason you rise. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is moving on in a way they never believed you could.